feeling good, can I tell?
Yeah, right. Yep, it's on red.
Okay. What's up, family? My name is Brother Ray Ray. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club. First of all, I want to give a round of applause for our people who came out to support the live Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club. Give yourself a big hand. Second of all, for our Zoom audience who's tuning in throughout the 50 states, Baltimore, Detroit, upstate, wherever that supports the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club, give yourself a big hand. Okay, mute yourself, thank you, Zoom audience. The Brooklyn William Mackey Jr.'s History Club meets every other Wednesday in honor of the great William Mackey Jr., Louis Ray Rivera, Amos Wilson, El-Haj Malik Shabazz, Brother Gil Noble, Brother Harold, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, and all the historians, the Olamatics, all the historians who gave up fame and fortune. They could have went another route, but they studied because they believed in the truth, and they sacrificed. In honor of the Olamatics, she drove a whole car from Teaneck all the way to the United African Movement because she believed in bringing people together. And she would eat her dinner there because she believed in lectures and she believed in bringing people in. So we never want these people to be forgotten, even in the age of YouTube, where they can just block you if they don't like information. And if you think I'm not telling the truth, look at what's going on right now. They're telling a certain person he can't even support anything. And he got more money than anybody. And they don't like it. So we never want to let these people be forgotten. So we meet in honor of William Mackey, Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Big Harold, all the people that gave up fame and fortune. Now we're going to move the camera over here. We have our publications. This is the Amos Wilson collection. In honor of Amos Wilson, we help Sababu to continue the work of Dr. Amos Wilson. We have what you call the Amos collection. Blueprint for Black Power. It's a good read. Black on Black Violence, the psychodynamic of self-annihilation in service of white domination. Every time you turn around, you hear some politician or somebody saying, crime is out of control. To speak for hours. Come out of. So we have these books. And they didn't have too many computers when Dr. Ben did this. Lovely. Our brother out of Georgia, Dr. Scott Whitaker, and Jose Fleming, MD, Monderson, the causes and solutions to disease, malnutrition, and the medical sins that are killing the world. Our brother, the irritated genie, Jews are the problem, World War III, food shortages, COVID-19, and an economic collapse. It's a short read, but our brother, the irritated genie, did an excellent job on this book. A lot of people are talking about COVID and this and that, but we have two books right here. The Truth About COVID-19, Exposing the Great Reset, Lockdown, and Vaccine Passport. Dr. Joseph McCullough and Ronald Cummings. Excellent book. And The Grand Poobah, The Real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health. If you want to get some knowledge, get these books. You think you know something that's been going down, when you read the book, it's going to blow your mind. So we have these books. Now I'm going to give you, family, some community events that's going on. to let the listening audience know that it's about education and it's about information. That is the key. Because they put a lot of stuff on now, and the great Professor Mackey would tell us down in his basement where he lived at, and we have original member, Brother Colvin. He would say, the media, they will make you look that way and pull a 50-ton rabbit out of their hat. That's what a magician does, and you go, ooh. So we have tomorrow, Thursday, Thorough Black Talk with Tad, Keisha, and Ashe. That comes on YouTube and I think Facebook. Excellent program. That program starts at 8 o'clock. Also on Mondays, out of Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, Revolutionary Radio. The Irritating Genie comes on at 10 o'clock on Mondays, a.m. WPLJ Birmingham Revolutionary Radio. That comes on and you can call into that show. Also, we have Brother Darren Muhammad. He comes on, he's on now, and he comes on Saturday, Tune In Radio, out of Baltimore, Glen Burnie. And he comes on Instagram, Mohammed the Camet. And that brother will give you everything out of Baltimore, Darren Muhammad. We also have James McIntosh, WBAI. 99.5. This program comes on every Wednesday. Minefield. It's WBAI 99.5 on your FM dial. Wednesday at 2 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
So tune into that family and you'll get some information on Simultap with Brother James McIntosh. Excellent program. Also, our community cop family with Brother Mike Graves and all leading Julian. Community Cop program comes on every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Manhattan Neighborhood Network. You tend to tune in at 5 o'clock and it comes down to Community Cop and you should listen to the older programs like that. Now we have another important program comes on Saturday at 10:30 p.m. While everybody is moving and grooving, trying to get back into the norm, our sister Empress Chi, Sister Filet, 10:30 on Blog Talk Radio. You type in Blog Talk, you scroll down to New Day Resurrection, type in Blog Talk, you put in Empress Chi, New Day Resurrection, and from 10:30, she'll tell you everything that's going on in Philadelphia. That's our Philadelphia connection. She just gave the Million Women's March. She just gave an excellent program down there, and we went down there and surprised her. So she was happy to see me, Mike, and Keisha. And I tell you, the sister could cook some food. So that's on Saturdays. Also, Dr. Aline, Your Immunity Project, comes on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. If you give me your email, I'll send you the Zoom link. And Dr. Aline has some good information on health coming down. So if you put your email in the chat, I'll give you that. Now, we have on Fridays, our Newark, New Jersey connection with Brother Trust Graham, African Echoes. That's another study group that come on Friday. Out of Newark, New Jersey. Trust Graham is the mediator of that. And they're doing the psychology of self-hatred and self-defeat toward the reclamation of the African mind. That's on Friday. Also on Saturday, the Know Thyself study group with Brother True. Trust Graham is also the mediator of that. Know Thyself study group out of Asbury Park. They're doing Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization. That comes on Saturday at 1:30. So you got Darren Muhammad, and then you got Brother True and them out of Asbury Park with Trust Graham, Friday, Sally. Unbelievable. And if you go into Simultap, Brother McIntosh always has a calendar on the events that they give him, periodically. Now, if you want to view all the lectures of the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club, you go into YouTube, you type in BK William Mackey Jr. History Club, and all our lectures will come up. So it'll be good information that you can get. because it's always about information and connecting. So, we have these events. Now, without further ado, I want everybody to give a great big hand. Dr. Fred Monderson came down here and saw Dr. Lewis, and he always wanted to come down to Mackey's in honor of William Mackey Jr. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic is the awesome African temples. I want everybody to give a great big hand to our keynote speaker, Dr. Fred Monderson.
Good evening. It's very difficult sometimes to dispute what the host says. But when he spoke about Brother Wilson, Brother Mackey, he forgot to say that Brother Mackey described the New York Times as all the news that's printed to fit. Their logo is all the news fit to print, but he had said that it was all the news that's printed to fit. That is to say, to project their own view of the way things should be. I want to thank Brother Mackey, Point Man, Brother Ray for inviting me. Actually, Dr. Lewis has been trying for the longest to get me to come down here, but we're all so busy. I'm finally here. I want to commend Brother Ray for that introduction, not about myself, but about the enormous volume of what's going on. You know, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good things that enough people don't know about it. So to know that there is that enormous calendar of events designed to uplift our people, it's wonderful to hear it. To be a part of it, however small, is indeed an honor for me. It's an honor for me to be here to address you. Why I want to thank not simply Brother Ray, but also Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis and I go back a long way. We traveled with Dr. Ben back in the 80s. Before Dr. Lewis went to Vanuatu, that's up there in the Pacific. And I think it's about 90 or so when Dr. Lewis used to hold these dinners in Harlem at the Mini Sink to raise funds for Dr. Ben, because Dr. Ben was conducting archaeological digs on Elephantine Island. And I remember distinctly there was an Indian man who attended. He was a black Indian, a Dravidian. And he said, in Harlem, he said, we are discriminated against in India. And that you brothers in Harlem and America and around the world must not forget us. And as a result, Dr. Ben wrote this book called They All Look Alike, where he was able to show that whether you were in the Pacific, in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean, or in the Great Lakes, we're all African people, and we're the victims of the same racial oppression. And we must stand together, and we must defend our heroes, those who have gone on, and those who are still on the battlefield today. I know that my topic today is listed as the awesome Egyptian temple. What I'd like to do today is I'd like to present some features physical features about the temple. And if I'm permitted to return, you see, these guys have a tendency to say, we'll have you back, but they never do. You know, so I don't know if I'd be too controversial that I wouldn't get the return invite. But in the return invite, I would like to speak about the ritual, what goes on in the temple. So today, part one, it will be the physical features of the temple, and part two will be what happens within the temple construct, the ritual, and so forth. Okay? I do always respect you so much that I have to spend a lot of time in preparation for my presentation. So you have to follow me on this because I want to impart truth. One of the things that when Ray said in his address, he used the term truth. And today, there's a lot of that not here with us. Okay? Just before I came, I was watching the TV. And there was what I call clear and succinct condemnation, the need for clear and succinct condemnation of violence. We are talking about practical violence and emotional violence. Emotional violence of a cultural nature against our culture, our people. There must be unconditional condemnation of falsity because the airwaves is inundated with false information. And people start to say those that are not grounded are being led in the wrong direction. But, you know, the old adage is that you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. However, Teddy Cooper said, if you work that beast hard enough, he's going to get thirsty and he want to drink. So we have to look about how we address the falsity and violence in the degradation of our culture, heroes and heroines. So my topic on the Egyptian temple, it simply goes like this, that Egyptian architecture, which the temple is a part of, is a fascinating subject, but far more important, religious architecture is infused with divine principles and guidance, resulting in the epitome of wisdom. The temple was born at creation time. Once the God arrived from existing in an alternative universe, and we're not talking about alternative as we know it today, alternative facts, alternative falsity, and what have you. But the real alternative universe, because this is what Dr. Obengo teaches, okay? So once the God had arrived from existence in the alternative universe, he stepped into this universe and found uncreated matter, that is to say, water, fluids, and he began to mold and create the world as we would come to know, consisted of what I call the five kingdoms. That is to say, the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the human kingdom. And he overlaid all of that with the divine kingdom, so we have the five kingdoms. Therein was the need for a temple on the primeval hill upon which the God first emerged. And to protect his existence, he chose a number of people to be his servants. Not servants in the subordinate manner, but the people who would help him preserve his person on earth in terms of sustenance and security. So that was when the temple was born. There are a number of temples. I like to go through all of them tonight because I'm told I have enough time. But two of the principal temples that I would like to focus on would be Karnak and Luxor. Those are New Kingdom temples. Okay, we always use Karnak as a yardstick in terms of how to explain what the forces of nature and divinity combined creates in this particular structure. In fact, I have a book called The Temple of Karnak. It's one of the few English language books that is in itself a guidebook. So you can take this into the temple and be able to find your way. And there's a great deal of, I always like to use images to underscore the text that I'm presenting. So you're getting two things instead of one. Okay? So the Temple of Karnak is one of my works. So in the Temple of Karnak, Malcolm, if I say Malcolm, I don't mean Malcolm the 10th. I mean Malcolm X. Malcolm always said that, well, I learned this reading passingly. He didn't read it about a particular subject in any great detail, but he learned about it. So I too had learned about Schwaller Lebis. He was a great French symbolist, and he was able to deconstruct much of what the ancient culture represented. You know, there was a guy named Adolf Ehrman, and it's been said by, I remember this back in '92, a fellow from the Met. He said that James Allen, I think his name was. He said that Adolf Ehrman was the only modern man who knew exactly what the ancient Egyptians meant. But I was looking at something a couple of days ago, and I was really puzzled by how he misinterpreted who these ancient Africans were. Anyway, so Schwaller says that during the Netters reign, the Netters were the entities we call God or principles. A book was found in the temple for the Netters of the first Aeneid. That is to say, it's been argued that that Egyptian civilization has been so long. There was a period in which the gods ruled, then the demigods ruled, and then their successors, the kings, ruled. And so you can consider the reign of the gods to be the first Aeneid. All right, and an Aeneid is really, we can get into all of that a little later. So the point I'm trying to get at is that many have argued they weren't sure whether the temple was constructed willy-nilly or based on a plan. If you really think about it, the exactitude of these structures and the duration of their existence cannot have been done haphazardly. They had to have had a plan. I remember there was a brother passed away a few years ago, Dr. Jack Felder. We worked together, him and I, in middle school. It was Joshua, Felder, and Monderson. So I took Jack to my home one day, and I opened this book, and I showed him a plan of a temple, and Jack said, "Oh my God, it's a computer." So these people had been they had prepared the notion of a plan based on a computer configuration much, much, much earlier than we would see the people who today get credit for creating it, but really copied from the ancient Africans who at the time weren't copywriting the work. Okay? So he says that first there was a book found in the time of the Netters, and then there was another book found in the Old Kingdom during the reign of Pepi I, and then there was another book, which is the plan, another book found during the Third Dynasty in the time of Imhotep. And again, during the Middle Kingdom, when Usertsen sent a contingent of people to repair the Temple of Abydos, that we know is now, Seti I of the 19th dynasty gets credit for building the existing Temple of Abydos, but there was a temple there before Seti during the Middle Kingdom. So there was a plan that this Middle Kingdom king gave to his contingent, his administrator. And then Queen Hatshepsut, on the base of her obelisk, the one at Karnak, she said that she had been inspired with the dimensions of this particular structure. Okay? And then later, now, her son-in-law, well, it's been argued that he was her nephew, her son, her brother, whatever. Thutmose III, the great conqueror, he built his festival temple to the rear of the sanctuary and to the rear of the Middle Kingdom tomb. It's called the Akhmeni. And he left the writing that said, "It came to my heart and I planned to have this structure constructed." So the point being made is that there was always a plan with a design construct that enabled the temple to be created. As I said, Malcolm had said that, he read about Schwaller passing me. But Schwaller said that, among other things, a number of things he said that the goal of life is consciousness. It's one thing to be conscious, but to be conscious continuously about your consciousness puts you on a higher level. Because, as we said, to know and not know, to know and not do is a problem. So you have to be conscious, consciously, okay? And he also said that architecture is living language. That is to say that when you look at a building of our time, we're talking about ancient, there are things that are being told to you that unless you have the vision and the comprehension, you cannot understand. Sometimes, even in our contemporary society today, you hear a guy say, "Well, I've been living on this block here for 40 years." Okay? And all of a sudden, one day he's coming home and you see a bunch of people standing over there and they're looking up and he said, "What are they looking at?" And then he looks up and he sees something that they are looking at that all the time that he's passed back and forth, he never saw. So there is a message that the architect is telling you, but you have to be ready to read it. Gary Ward, which was a New York radio personality, when he was on WLIB in the 90s, he used to read some of the stuff that I wrote in the Daily Challenge on the radio. You could ask him, if you're old enough, you probably may have heard it. But he always said that the information you don't have could kill you, which means that you gotta have all the information. Okay? You cannot sit down and try to deliver based on willy-nilly statements, falsity, that you drink somebody's Kool-Aid and then you say, "Well, this is a fact." It's not. Everything, if you look at some of the cases of things that are happening, people this guy killed somebody and 20 years later, they arrest him. Because once something has been written on the blackboard of history, it remains there. So when you make a statement, if your statement is not grounded in fact, you look like a fool because they'll show you. Now, back in 1900, right, the question of the length of the reign of Amenhotep II, who was the son of Thutmose III. Right? They were trying to determine how long he reigned. And one guy said, "Well, you only reigned for 10 years," and another guy said 26 years. And H.R. Hall said, "The lack of evidence is not a sound position to take, because tomorrow evidence can be discovered which puts your position in jeopardy." So not because he's not there. If I say that there's no Dr. Lewis and all of a sudden walks in, my statement is invalid because I am arguing based on little or no information. So you must have and know everything. For your ticket to survival is spent in especially challenging times such as today. Right? We know that architecture is the great glory of Egypt, but sadly, without philosophy, there is no architecture. As such, Dr. Theophilo Benga, he was Dr. Diop's research assistant. They worked together. He's one of the greatest living black Egyptologists today. He said regarding the temple, he says, practically every object in the temple was imbued with cosmic significance. The temple foundations, the ritual statuary, that is the image of the divinity or his associates, his family, whatever. The temple wells, the pylons, the sacred pool, and the orientation of the temple, everything had cosmic energy in it. So, this evening, I'm here to speak about Egyptian temples, but that in itself is miles down the road. Nevertheless, we must understand that the temple itself is God. Some scholars even today have argued that you are God having a divine experience on earth. Notwithstanding, the temple is extremely holy ground. When Ptah emerged to begin creation, he was the land, the risen land, the holy ground, the sacred space. That is why Dr. Ben said, watch your language, dress and behavior, in the temple. He said, don't leave any refuse on the grounds, but most important, don't enter the sanctuary. For in ancient times, only the Pharaoh and the high priest could enter the sanctuary to behold the God force within and to perform the ritual. Well, today I'd like to address the physical structure of the temple. As I said, the next time I'd like to speak to the ritual of what happens in the temple. However, these guys, like I said, they have a tendency to say, okay, we gotta have you back. It happened in Harlem, we gotta have you back, but they never have you back because, something comes along. But that's okay, I'm busy, I must begin by saying there were several types of temples. But the two principal ones were the divine or worship temple and the king or the mortuary temple. Of course, there was a third temple called the processional temple. You see, in times that we are dealing with, I'm an ancient man, there were two things that were constant. One is that the river was the principal highway of traffic, and two, most divinities traveled on a palanquin where a bunch of, a contingent of priestly figures carried them on their shoulder. And after a while, they got tired and they needed a place to rest. So you had these processional temples created. And the processional temple basically had two entrances. You can go in one way and come out in the other. And as for example, Queen Hatshepsut created six processional temples between Karnak and Luxor Temple. Okay? Nevertheless, from a distance, the temple was considered the sanctuary of that god. But when you enter the temple, the sanctuary was a specific location where the god's image resided. It was the highest point in the temple, and you'll come to recognize that as we go along. That is to say, once you get into what is called the covered temple, that is that part of the temple that has a roof, the floor begins to rise and the ceiling begins to descend. So where the god sits is the highest point in the structure. The temple is the house of the god. He lives there with his family. Brother and sister gods sometimes visit, even resides. Karnak temple or Karnak sanctuary created for the Theban triad, which is Amun and his wife and son. it was a complex of something like 32 different temples. And it's divided into 3 segments. Say the northern section, the central section, and the southern section. And to the north was the sanctuary of the war god, the war god. And to the south was the sanctuary of Amun's wife, war god Montu, Amun's wife Mut, and Amun was in the center incarnate.
Thank you.
In speaking of the temple, Shwala reminds us that there is what is inside and what is outside of the temple. From the inside comes the ripened sap that gives the seed of knowledge, the seed of creation, the seed of intellect. Right? From the outside comes the nourishment brought from the sky. That is everything that's out there, whether it's people, minerals, animals, plants, and everything else that make the holy site function. This is the idea of the temple, the house of the God. So we know the temple is built from the inside looking out. It's interesting because when you look at modern man's construct of the way the world is, it's always based on the European view of the world. I mean, for example, we know that Greenwich Mean Time passes through London, okay? And according to that cultural belief, there is what are called concentric circles emanating from London outward. So the farther you are from the concentric circles is the more uncivilized you were, okay? And as such, wherever these Europeans went, they had a tendency to name things, even in this country. Some of the greatest athletes are given names. You know, I can't forget Magic Urban, right? I think his name is Julius Urban. He always boasted that he became famous under 2 names. Okay, his government name and the name he was given, Magic. So, I mean, I was teaching in middle school. I was teaching some young people, and we were looking at a simple book on geography. I gave my attention that all over Canada, as big as Canada is, every piece of rock is named after a British personality. So they changed the name of the indigenous people and it's named after. So these people have a tendency to name things. And if you're not careful, once they name you, they can control you. Right? Of course, they're rebellious Africans. Malcolm would call them house people and field people and stuff like that. You have to decide where you are because you can be recognized one way or the other. Okay. So, in regards to Temple of Karnak especially, the home of God Amun, Thebes, or today we call it Luxor. Again, pardon me if I divert, but at the African Festival in Brooklyn, New York, I was, I had a booth. I've always had a booth there, and this brother came to my booth, and he created a stir for me by telling me that I was using the word cartouche, and I should be using the word chenou, which is what the ancient Egyptians called the oval that surrounded or contained the name of a king, a noble person, right? Of course, he didn't see the nearly 24 books that was in front of me that I had written. But he found that I had missed a comma on page 96. You know, that's why as the writing man is the exact man. If I spell I with a single letter, you will say, that's not I. I have to be exact with what I write, okay? But those same people, you ask, where you going? I'm going to Africa. But Africa is not the indigenous name. Just the same way Africa is a European name, Dr. Ben pointed this out, right? Alkebulan, Ortega, those are some of the earlier names. But so they're arguing on one side and then they're not, and they're accepting on the other, right? You got to be you gotta be formed. You gotta know, once you take a public stance on something, you gotta make sure that your facts are correct. Okay? We all under inspection, okay? And I mean, I'm a young man who came to this country. I celebrated my 19th birthday. I came from Guyana. Big family. My mother had 8 children. Grandmother took me over. I was 5. I was number 5, and this and that. Grandmother sent me to America to get an education. And I had many options, which I didn't take. And I had a hitching post, which is that I always wanted to say I didn't want grandmother to see me as a failure. So I took the long, straight, and narrow way. And guess what? I'm still here standing. Okay? I didn't just arrive. I come from a family of Pan-African internationalists. Okay, Pan-African internationalists. This is my grandmother, Cherise Preville, who she was born in 1895. She was a Darbyite. Okay? And this is my mother, Mita Monderson. She was born in 1918, and she was a Pan-African. She is here on March 6, 1957, having fought for and wearing the Ghanaian flag the day that they got independence. So I have a long history of fighting for African people. Everything I do is African. Ladies and gentlemen, I must say, however, I am not here to tear down America, honestly. I recognize that in this country, there is good and bad. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of evil. And my job is to cultivate the good and eradicate the evil. Right. Plain and simple. Okay? And I've been doing everything I can from that day to today, and I'll do that like Reverend Daughtry said. They got to wheel me up because I'm an African. True and true. One brother I know said, "Brother Fred, you don't have to apologize to nobody. We know that you're a warrior. We know what you're doing. So I'm doing what I'm doing." Okay? Now, as I said, Theophilo Bengler said that Karnak was a place of high privilege, filled with the presence of divinity. And he considered that he quotes another French Egyptologist saying that Karnak was the most carefully calculated of constructions. That is to say, you cannot do a building like that, a complex like that, unless you have a plan and you add it to it. Karnak is a structure that took 2,000 years to build. It has been described as vegetative construction. That is to say, it kept growing over a period of time so that 2,000 years later, it still wasn't finished. Because it's evidence that there was a war and the builders were called away to fight the war, and some of their work were left unfinished. Okay? Now, so we see that the temple was conceived as a microcosm of the universe. It was built in stone because the king's palace was generally built of brick, constructed of Nile mud with some sand and perhaps a little foliage, and it could last for a period of time. But the house of the god had to be permanent. And so in the evolution of building strategy, they were able to now use stone because this is a country that was full of stone. No detail of its interior decoration, the ceiling, observational ports, right? They use this knowledge to orient religious and funerary monuments with tremendous accuracy. After all, Karnak, as I said, was described as vegetative construction, and it is still incomplete after 2,000 years. We must remember that science began in the Nile Valley. It didn't really begin in Egypt per se, as we know it, in the valley. The people of Naphtali, which is an area of, so in Egypt we have what was called, and we'll come to all of this, the northern and southern kingdom. So Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Upper Egypt was the south, but to the south of the south was a place called, in the western desert was a place called Naphtali, where people like Bobal and Brophy believed that this is where civilization began, in the desert. Civilization did not begin in the Nile Valley. Civilization began in the harsh reality of the desert, where at that time there was a lot of rainfall and people were able to begin early agriculture and practice cow culture. Cows, agriculture. Okay? And out of that cow culture concept, they created and began worshiping the mother goddess, who was a replica of what the sacred cow that gave nourishment to humanity. Milk, blood, skin, horn, all these things. So in the evolution of the early African mind, you have to understand, as things began, as the fog of antiquity began to be cleared, they begin to philosophize and create the concepts that would really impact on the advancement of civilization down through into modern times. So these people, Naphtali, were the precursors of the Egyptians. They didn't come from the north, from the Mediterranean, we must know that. They were the first astronomers, the first scientists. They not only mapped the heavens, they also navigated by star positioning. Even as they moved their cattle at night, when the sun went down, it would be a bit cooler, and it started, that's when they moved their cattle to water and to pasture and move it back. So they were beginning to expand their minds. We're not speaking of lazy Africans waiting for Morton Stanley and Dr. Livingstone to come and discover them and what have you, and to create what we call the white man's burden. They were working, and I'll tell you what, they were thinking Africans pushing back against the darkness of ignorance. Let's remember, the precession. The precession was an astronomical time period that was considered to be 26,000 years long. All right. To measure one, you have to measure it against the second one. Again, some of you older folks may remember 2010, the rally in the mall of our era. I took my son Eric, and we went there, and we went to listen to Charles Finch III. And I posed a question to him about the procession, and that Finn said, but there were two. So what he was saying is that instead of one measuring against a second, possibly a third, there were two measuring against a third and a fourth. So we're looking at 26,000, 52,000, 78,000, 104,000 years of African stargazing. Now that they say, that's kind of far out. It's not. In 2011, the New York Times published the discovery of a paint factory in a cave. And in the factory, they found a paint pot with red paint and a brush, right? Now, try to envision this artist sitting there in cave facing his wall, and he's trying to create a palette to put his work on the wall. That's complex thinking. So what they have said, first of all, that this period, this of discovery from which this paint factory, this paint pot comes, had been carbon dated to 107,000 years. Okay? And that this here pushed back complex thinking far back, because the standard view was that Europeans began complex thinking between 35 and 40,000 years ago. And if at 107,000, an African is sitting there saying, well, I'm going to put this, that, I'm going to paint me and then put the whatever so I can shoot them down tomorrow, that's complex thinking. Okay? I mean, the next thing is that the oppressor tries to claim that as his. Imagine a European in the heart of Southern Africa. I mean, I'm talking about the Boers who only came in 1652. We're talking about 107,000 years ago, before Afrikaners. Okay? Dr. Ben got a lot of mileage when he talked about when they discovered Zimbabwe, and they were saying that there were shipwrecked Chinese who found their way in that portion of Africa. Right? But the fact of the matter is that, and of course, 107,000 years is not that far-fetched. There have been found evidence that dates to creative thinking or creative actions in these Africans as much as 150,000 years. But there was no hard evidence of the use of color in the artwork. Okay, so of course we're not talking about Zizanchiko's boys at 1.75 million and Afrikaners and Lucy at 200,000 or what have you. But it does show that Africa was not a dark continent. It was dark in the minds of the Europeans who didn't go anywhere. And when they find something new, they discovered it. And discovery becomes the order of the day. So imagine that I did say that I began at 18 years old. I came to America to get an education. In the 60s, it was rough. So I went in the United States military to fix myself, plain and simple. I met a number of young black guys from all over the country, and they started teaching me what it meant to be black. Because where I come from in Guyana, there was no black history. Black history wasn't born as it. Okay? But they were twice as dumb as I was, because they would say, ask Brother Monderson, he's from New York. You know, they know everything. I didn't know nothing, but I was learning as we went along. I went to Fort Jackson, then I went down to Fort Benning, Georgia. And one night I'm in NCO Academy, and I feel my bed. I wake up, I feel my bed shaking like this, and when I woke up, I see a bunch of men sitting along my bed with white sheets. Well, of course, I thought I didn't know anything, I was just learning. So I grabbed my sheet, I put on my sheet, and what happened next thing I knew, everybody's scattered. I said, well, what's going on? I thought we having a summer party or whatever. So the next day, this guy said to me, he said, well, they thought that you were going to do to them what they were going to do to you, so they ran away. So anyway, next thing I know, they shipped me out to Vietnam. Okay, so I'm out there now. I'm 11B10, right? Ralph Bush Vita, the guy in front, Ashburn Brown, he's in Atlanta, Georgia, right? So now we're meeting all these black people, and then I became even more black. Then I come home. First thing I heard when I come, I think it was 1971, end of the year in 71, early 72. I'm walking down the street in Brooklyn, trying to find my way now, because I'm now back home. I see a guy named Barney holding a replica of this book like this. And he's talking about this guy named Ben Yakinen. I said, who? He said, Ben Yakinen. Man, you gotta get this book. So I ran up to 125th Street, where Dr. Moore used to have the health food store over there by Lennox. I got me a copy of the book and saw read the book. Next thing I know, I said, I gotta meet this guy. So I ran up to 125th Street at Lennox, chock full of nuts over there, second floor, and I meet Dr. Ben. Well, I didn't meet Dr. Ben, then Dr. Ben Yakinen, right? So when I went back to Brooklyn, I got together with Barney and said, and we started talking about the book, and young revolutionary, you know, and this and that. And well, I said, his name is so difficult to pronounce. So I said, let's call him Ben Joe. Ben Joe Hannon. So we started calling him Ben Joe, and then, well, in the spring of 1973, I enrolled in this New York City Technical College to begin my career in the City University of New York, because I spent nearly 25 years in City University of New York. I got 6 degrees from them, you know. We met Curtis and Moody. He went out to California. We all come out of what they call UCLA. What does UCLA mean? The University at the corner of Lenox Avenue. University called Lennox Avenue, right? Remember, Al Sharpton used to have to stand on the ladder to speak from that kind of community, right? Anyway, Curtis said that we have to be more respectful. So we sat down again and we said, let's call him Dr. Ben. That name stuck, as I always said. Dr. Ben was taking enemy fire, friendly fire, and family fire at the time. Okay, it wasn't easy. But us young, budding scholars started to buy his books. And to give him those $5 and those $7, those $10 that he needed to launch self-publishing. So I ended up buying practically every book that Dr. Ben had produced. I know you don't buy my books, but that's okay. Professor Small said that's on you, because what's in my book, you need it. You'll discover it later on, stuff like that. So when Dr. Ben was in the nursing home, I would go there to see him. And I took this book when I was going to publish it. I took my computer and I would try to refresh his memory about some of the things that we had seen in Egypt and what have you. And he signed off on this book, and he said to me, 2 things he said to me. He said, Monderson, I want to go back to Egypt one last time. I don't want to go out in the field. I want to sit in the hotel at the Oberoi and the people come to see me. And I told his lawyer, some guy, I think he's White or whatever his name, and he said to me, the judge will not permit me to allow Dr. Ben to go to Egypt. So Dr. Ben was never able to fulfill that last request. And then he said to me, he says, I don't know what happened to all of my books. I said, Doc, don't worry. The cover of each and every one of your books is in this book, which I call Celebrating Dr. Ben Johanna. And on the overleaf, on the overleaf of this book, you will see it right here. On the overleaf of every copy of his book that I bought, Dr. Ben autographed it for me. Okay? So now, this is one of the books that whenever I can get him, he's not busy. to sign off on the book, but I didn't realize the importance of having his signature in the book that he wrote. This book, it says, when he autographed this book, he says, I give this book, I never understand what he meant by that. He says, this book is given to Frederick Monderson with respect from Joseph A. Ben Duhanan, August 4th, 1997. Right? 1977, my mistake. Okay? Why did he give, as opposed to say, I endorse this book with gratitude or whatever? So there was something that he knew, that he thought that he wanted to have me portray. Okay? You have to understand that my decision in this field was based on an admonition that Dr. Ben gave me in 73. He said, Monderson, there are 50 countries in Africa. Choose one and specialize in it. Become a specialist, not a generalist. And I chose Egypt. That from that time onward, I put all my money, my effort, my time into understanding this culture. And Professor George Simmons. Now, if you ever get any one of my books, you will see, and when Reggie for Sonetta TV interviewed me about the legacy of Dr. Ben, he got a lot of mileage on this photograph here, which showed Professor Simmons and Dr. Ben standing with me sitting at the feet of my heroes, and Professor Dr. Jeffries, Michael X, Michael Carter, and some other people.
Move your hand over a little bit so I can get that photo.
We were at the Victoria 5 Theater that was next to the Apollo 125. So all of my books have this photo in it on the overleaf of the overleaf of the title page. Right? So I consider myself as a keeper of the legacy of Dr. Ben. So my job is to deliver. I like creating. So I brought this. This was 2017. This was my 10th annual Memorial Day tribute to Dr. Ben. It started around Memorial Day. Well, when I did it, people said, but he's not dead. It wasn't about him being dead. It was around that time because, time slots are difficult to come by. So I chose around Memorial Day weekend. So I did attend, even the sister, she had to go to tribute to the ancestors. She couldn't make that one of those, right? And finally, I was in Egypt in 15, and as I was coming out of the Karnak temple, I met these two men. They were sitting there, and they called me over, and we started to talk about how Europeans were the dominant economic force in Egypt. They were in the hotel business, in the travel industry, and all that. And the guy said to me, "Can you give us a lecture?" I said, "Yeah, of course." When I come back. So when I went back in 16, I did a lecture in Karnak Temple called the first Dr. Ben lecture on Karnak Temple, because Dr. Ben was always considered a master of Karnak. Dr. Ben, a master of Karnak, Professor Simmons, a master of Karnak, Brother Abdul, a master of Karnak, and Monderson, a master of Karnak. 17, I came back. Helmi said, as long as I'm director of the temple, you can speak here. I'm not talking about some guy carrying a bunch of people into the temple and standing by this wall and said, well, you know what, this is a column and that's a door and what have you. I'm talking about a lecture given in the name of Dr. Ben in Karnak Temple. Imagine! With the scientific department recording what was being said. 17. I did it again in 18. I did 3 lectures. 19 when I come back, I don't know what happened. They moved Helmy. And the other guy that took over the temple, he said, no more. But no one has ever lectured in Karmic Temple, especially our people. And in my case, I did it in the name of Dr. Ben. Yeah. Right? So I do consider myself as carrying the legacy of Dr. Ben. Okay? So let's go back to 15. Okay, so I was in Egypt in 15, and I saw a book called Wonderful Things, A History of Egyptology. So it caught my mind right away, so I got it, okay? And I read the book coming across, okay?
Let me see the cover again, Doc.
It's called History of Egyptology by Jason Thompson. I read the book, very well written. Let me backtrack. 1975. Again, young, revolutionary. I got a book by a guy named Brian Fagan. He wrote a book called The Rape of the Nile. They're gone. I mean, they showed us how all of these collections, Italy, Germany, France, Britain, all of them, Sweden, all of them, how they got their collections.
Say the title again for the audience.
This one is called, Brian Fagan called The Rape of the Nile, 1975.
Thank you.
Brian Fagan, hold that name, right? Okay, so now 16, I went back. They were saying that there's going to be a second volume coming up. 17, I was back in I go to Egypt practically every year, but I didn't go for the honors. So 17, I got volume 2. So I saw one, I have one, so I said, let me get 2. Again, well written, History of Egyptology. So 18, I went back with Eric, my son, that I lost, and I got volume 3. So I had volumes 1, 2, 3. Right? Well written. And guess what? Brian Fagan said that this is the definitive work on Egyptology. Okay, great. So now I say, but I don't see Dr. Diop's name in it. Obed is not here. Ben, John, Asa, Manana, none of this real name in this book. And it's the definitive work. This is what they're pushing. Now, this book here is published by the American University in Cairo Press. They do a lot of stuff. They're down there on the ground producing works. But some of their works are listed as not for sale outside of the the Middle East. Not for sale outside of the Middle East. Now, if you don't go there, you can't buy it. Right? But who's going there? The Europeans. The French, the British, the Germans, Spanish, Italian. The American University in Cairo Press. This is something that they produce, right? Full of pictures. I mean, they got access. People like me, we got to take pictures on the run. They got access to go in there and set up and get the photographs. Ancient Egypt, American University in Cairo Press. Right? Not for sale outside of the Middle East. Luxor and the Valley of the Kings. Alright? Not for sale outside of the Middle East. So I got my man over there. I knew him from Dr. Ben's time. More than 30 years. Every time he retired, every time I go to Egypt, he drop everything, take me around. These people don't carry you to their houses. He carried me to his house. Carried my son, my wife, all of us. So we got this buddy. So he takes me to the Temple of Luxor. The Temple of Luxor gets all of the best finds in the city of Luxor. There was one photograph in there that one piece of artifact that I wanted to get. So he took me into the museum, and I spoke to the lady that was running it. I said, I just want this one photograph. And she said, one photograph? I said, yeah. So she sent an assistant with me to that particular image to take the photograph. They have over 12 different guards walking around. You can't take photographs in it. So now, this book here called the Luxor, Valley of the Kings, it has a wonderful piece on the museum. Again, follow me on this, right? Wonderful piece on the museum, among other things. But guess what? One image that is missing in this book that they're talking about, this is the best description of this wonderful museum. The one image that is not in this wonderful collection on the Museum of Luxor Museum is this image of God Amun during the time of Thutmose III, 18th dynasty, where the god is shown as black skin. It's not in the book, but it's in my book. This is called Who Were the Ancient Egyptians? Okay. Now, this image here is that of Queen Ahmes Nefertari. She was the ancestress of the 18th dynasty, the most venerated person in all of Egypt. This image of King Tut is not the image that's in the Cairo Museum, but it's the image that was in the Oberoi Hotel at Aswan, Upper Egypt, where Dr. Ben used to take us because it was the Nubians are working there, the black people of Egypt were working at there, so we always used to go there, right? Guess what? Even during Ben's time, they were building a new hotel on Elephantine Island, and the hotel was finished. They removed all the Africans from the island, and they own the island, and the name of the hotel is called Movenpick. So in 17, when I took my wife, I said, let's go over to the Oberoi Hotel to have dinner so I can get some pictures of these black images in the restaurant. Guess what? The restaurant is closed. Right? So they said, well, you have to go over to Movenpick, so it's not over there. So this year now, when I went back, 22, I just came out of Egypt in the name Oberoi is no longer there. The name Movenpick is on both hotels, and these images have disappeared. But they haven't disappeared because I took the photograph. The point is that men always say, go to Egypt. You gotta go to Egypt. Now I'm telling you, if you go now, you miss a whole lot of stuff. Like if you just came in and this portion of the lecture we already covered A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. So we can pick up J, K, and so forth, right? Okay. all of this brings me to what I said was perhaps why you wouldn't have me back. So, excuse me. Over the last more than 6 weeks, I was troubled. I went out of the country and I kept, it's practically like if I was fighting with myself. I met this clown. Okay? I met this clown who said to me, Obama is trash. Letitia James is trash. Eric Adams is trash. Listen, man, listen. It is what it is, okay? The British Prime Minister said them as breaks. Fact is, when Tawana Brawley said to Sharpton, these men raped me, he didn't stop them. He said, hell no. Okay? I came up on a guy named Barack Obama that was on assault, a black man on the assault. Say what you will. Obama does business white, he go home to a black woman who's a slave descendant. And she suddenly keeps him in line. He does business white, go black. Asante called it his time, the lynching of Obama. Okay? I came upon Obama on the assault, and I wrote a book called Obama Ready to Lead. Okay. I wrote nearly 300 articles for the black press in defense of Obama. Okay? They came out in Obama Master Washington DC. Obama Master and Commander. Obama, the journey complete. Okay. You have a right to say, I don't like this person and don't like her. But you don't have I have a right not to accept your alternative view.
That's
Okay?
right.
So now, this guy says to me, well, you know, history will prove the greatest American president of the last 50 years was Donald J. Trump. I said, wait a minute now. Well, and on top of that, when I said no, I can't believe that. He wanted me to do this Lorena Bobbitt thing, right? And I remember in the movie Shawshank Redemption, the guy said, you put it in my mouth, my teeth come down, I eat the sausage. Okay? Why I didn't agree with him is that, first of all, in 8 years, these people said that how Obama had done 17 lies. Told 17 lies. He came up one day with a light colored suit and they nearly crucified him. Right?
That's right, that's right.
There was a woman named Michelle Bachmann. She said in 2012 that God told me to run. I mean, I was following everything that is unfolding, right? God told me to run. So I said, well, if God told you to run, He would give you the keys to 1600. Right? And He didn't. He said, oh, Obama's running against the government in Washington, D.C. None of these people went to jail. So I wrote this book called A Gangster Government. Where does it call a gangster government a gangster government? which was really what was going on in 16. Call against the government to go against the government. Well, all of this stuff here broke when George Floyd was assassinated or murdered, whatever.
Yes.
So I wrote this book called "Get Your Knee Off Our Necks," right? And well, I wasn't satisfied with that. Okay, so I wrote this one called "Who Speaks for the Black Vote in the Age of Trump?" Okay. Well, Jonathan and Dr. King said, "Come to Washington, D.C. on August 20th, 28th in 2020." And I went there with the Black Eagle and I'll be sure I think was the MC. And I wrote this one called "We March for Voting Rights." And then, this year I finished it up, this one called "Leaderless Republicans." And you want to know what's going on? Like I said, you don't have to buy it. But I'm just talking. I'm producing, okay?
Yes, sir.
So that was that I wrote on that bed. There's another one called "Black Extravaganza." That's a piece you gotta have, okay? And then this third one I call it "Let's Liberate the Temple." Right? It's all on Amazon. You can get it up there. You, of course, you pay the taxes and postage and all that. You get it from me, you don't pay that. Okay. So, and then 37 up there. And I got this one here called "Reflections on Ancient Egypt, Parts 1 and Part 2. I haven't released them. They're about to be released. And Black History Every Day, Part 1, and Black History Every Day, Part 2, and these are going to be released in early January, so I will get credit for 2023. Okay? So, but my thing is that I can say this and I say that when I'm delivering for our people, okay, look, you don't have to get it. I'm writing for your children, your grandchildren. Okay? So when they discover my work, Tyrus used to say, "My score is on the board, match it." So I'm working to produce so that our people will have something that they can look at later on and strengthen their resolve to deal with the continuous challenges that they're facing. So, like I said, my topic is the Egyptian temple. Right? So, the temple is sometimes an incomprehensible phenomenon. For example, the Hapsal Hall in Karnak Temple, this enormous structure, the largest indoor building. Dr. Ben reminded us, you must visit it some 5 or 6 times before you understand what it means you're looking at. You know, when you go in there with these tourist guys or what have you, and they tell you, you spend an hour and say, "Man, the place is hot." Of course it's hot, it's Egypt, it's a desert country. Right, let's get back to the hotel where it's nice and cool. And in the afternoon, you do a little shopping, and if you're good and all that, you don't know nothing, so you saw all this big stuff there, and you get bamboozled. So, the temple is a building that can speak in a number of ways through the material, the foundation, the plan of the building, the elevation of the building, the covering, the roof, the lighting, okay, the orientation, not to mention the site where it's located. Thus, Shwala, he said the building speaks the language only spirit can understand. It is sacred writing. You look at the temple, really. You go into the European museums and there's people watching on this painting and all that. This is what's happening. When you go there, you can start to watch the temple and wonder what it is that the architects were trying to say to you. They're not trying to say anything to you. They were constructing an eternal house for their divine spirit to come there and reside there because they knew that it was secure and they would get sustenance. So this is why they call it a house of life. It radiated not only spiritual and theological life, but intellectual life. And speaking of intellectual life, I have created, I told you I'm into the whole notion of creation, right? So I created this, it's a 12-volume reading strategy. I have a copy of it somewhere. It is designed to teach our people how to think, our young people. When the Russians were contemplating using nuclear weapons in Ukraine, General Austin said, it's not something we look at one time, we look at it 24/7 so we'll know what is the move. What we have to do in terms of educating and cultivating our young people is have them focus on their cultural background 24/7 so that they can be strong. Bob Brown would say, standing tall with my back, with my shoulder held back and my head held high, I'm ready to move forward. I created this wonderful reading strategy where I collected something like 30-odd reading features that young people can know and understand. And on top of that, I have an introduction to help them write hieroglyphic script in simple language, their names and simple sentences and so on. And at the bottom of it, I have the word search unit. There's what's called in the beginning a set of discovery questions, and at the end a set of discussion questions. So it is a milieu of all kinds of stuff. Again, it's up to you to discover it, because your children and your grandchildren need it. But because this is so powerful, and I know that the funds, it's so powerful that any parent, whether you're in a cave in Afghanistan or wherever, what you want? What's your greatest one? I want my son to learn how to read. This year, because a verb is a verb in German, French, Swahili, you name it. So if I can get this book translated in 100 languages, everybody's going to be satisfied. But it's not for everybody. It's for everybody. But primarily it is for the African people, the African youngster. Okay. Look. Love is the message. Okay? But, I mean, we gotta be real. Okay? And we gotta be real because our people are being challenged. Listen, I mean, I voted in every election since I came out of Vietnam in 1971. Everyone, except 9/11. Alright? I don't vote for that people or that people. I pick some people. I vote for me and my family. Okay? But we are under assault. Voter suppression is rampant and it's real. Yeah. Right? People are taking over. But this is our country. Where's your ancestors buried? Right here. Right? Where you going to be buried? Right here, not in Russia. You understand? So we got to fight. We got double consciousness. I didn't say it. Right. W.P. Du Bois said that. Yeah. Right? So we got to fight. It's like us trying to get home as a soldier and you have to turn and fight the last battle. Okay? Our people need us. And we have to stand up and make sure that our culture is preserved, because the oppressor is not going to preserve our culture.
That's right.
Okay, he's not going to do it. We got to do it. Okay? So, anyway, I listen, there are a lot of people getting out there and speaking all kinds of things. So, why should what I say, which is the truth, be Muslim? Hey, look.
Go ahead and teach.
So, in order to, okay, the king is really the benefactor of a temple built for the god, right? But he doesn't do the work. He do the symbolic construct, and then he turns it over to his architect. And the architect has to be the top of his game, spiritually, intellectually, morally, culturally, before he can actually begin this journey of creating a house of perfection that the God of man saying, yo man, you miss a tile over there. I ain't coming down. So everything has to be so complete in order to encourage the God to come and speak and live there with him. So the architect has to be ready. Okay? Now, one of the things that we need to understand is how modern scholarship orients the building of a temple, or actually the temple that you view, right? Look, I have to say this, it is my destiny. You've heard of Marcus, and Malcolm, and Marlon, and Martin, Mandela, and Monderson.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay? I may talk the talk and talk the walk, but I have walked the talk and I have walked the walk. Listen, thank God I'm still standing. And Reverend Daughtry said, they have to wheel me up. And I talk until my time is called to join the ancestors. I know people like Son Carson and G2 and a whole bunch of them are waiting up there for me. Okay? And my son is with me all the time. So, I mean, fear is not an option.
You still got a lot of work to do.
Well, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about cosmological creation, right? So the gods sit up there and they decide they want to inhabit the earth, and they figure, look, we have to come up with some kind of strategy to feel comfortable down on earth. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make an earth, and we're going to create, like I said, the 5 kingdoms. The mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, we can create the human kingdom, and we can overlay it with the spiritual or the divine kingdom. So, Ptah, which became the first god to emerge. Now, there's a guy named Wilkerson found some petroglyphs in the eastern desert of southern Upper Egypt, and he said that the first god evidence up there was Min. God Min, which you'll get to understand who he was. And then, but Alfred Churchward had said that the first god to be known was Bes, B-E-S. Sorry, Ptah, my mistake. Ptah, right? Ptah and Bes, those were dwarf gods, right? So, the first god, Ptah, he made Atum and he made Ra. Right? The first principle. And Ra, first thing he did, he made black people. The Nubians. Made Nubians before he made Egyptians. Okay? Now, Albert Churchward tried to date when the Nubians first started worshiping God, as I call it, having sweet communion with deity. He says 300,000. Now, the first written documents we have would be the pyramid text that is dated to the 4th and 5th dynasty, the 5th and 6th dynasty. But You know, there's a lot of talk about Homer writing the Iliad and the Odyssey, and they say that the Odyssey was written about 800 BC. Dr. Diop said that if Homer visited Egypt, it was during the time of the 25th dynasty. All right? Now, it appears that the earliest Greek writings is found at Abu Simbel, and it's 5th dynasty. So, the argument holds that if Greek writings as evidence in the Odyssey and the Iliad, then it must have been 1,000 years in the making, which would extend Greek culture back as far as 1500 BC. Now, if Churchward said that we were having sweet communion with deity at 300,000, and we first get the first written word around 2500, then there is somewhere between 2500 and 5000 where written works begin, because a French Egyptologist named Alexandre Moret. Okay, let's back up a little bit, right? The American Egyptologist James Henry Breasted said that he's trying to date the north anterior to the south. And he said that the north had risen, conquered the south, and then fell, and then the south re-emerged and conquered the north. So the first civilization was of the north, and the second civilization was of the south, dated around 3000 BC. So Alexander Moret says, by whom, quote unquote, the Diop, if you will, by whom was the south influenced, if not by the north? And Dr. Diop says, if that is so, why are all the monuments and the sacred sites in the south and not in the north? Okay, so the discovery of the petroglyphs in the eastern desert and the people of Nabta Playa in the western desert of southern Upper Egypt, as well as in 1982, this guy named his work comes out at American University in Washington, D.C. Arnett. He was able to show that the emergence of hieroglyphic language is found south of Egypt. Okay. W. Stevenson Smith, in the Art and Architecture of Ancient Egypt, found that the earliest Nile Valley art, dated to about 7,500 BC, was found south of Egypt. Okay? Williams, who discovered Ta-Seti, the kingdom of the Ethiopians, whose cultural motifs, the white crown, a palace facade, front of the building, the enthroned pharaoh wearing the white crown, an incense burner, handheld incense burner, types of cattle, the Horus figure, the Horus bird. All of this was found at this place called Ta-Seti. Van Sertima tells us it was dated at least 200 years before we see them in Egypt. And he dated Egypt as beginning at 3200, not 3000. Okay, what they're trying to do is to compress. There's something called the short chronology and the long chronology. And the short chronology was designed to be compressed so that it would be contemporary with Mesopotamia, so that they would say, well, Mesopotamian civilization was either equal to or anterior to Egypt, and start to say, well, James Breasted said, well, any argument that places Mesopotamian civilization before Egypt is not worthy of a credible response. So the long chronology, which takes us back to at least 4000 BC, begins the first dynasty. He is saying that that Tarseti should be dated between 35 and 3200. As far as that, of course, there's a lot of disunity, if you will, in terms of where this dynasty begins, because Maulana Kuranga says the first dynasty should be dated at 6200. Okay, so some people, some 40s, Philinus Petrie gives 5700, Boyd gives 4400, and it's anyway. So all of these sites have been found to the south of Egypt. And that is why both Brophy and Boval date these people or name these people as being the precursors to the Egyptians. So let's get that out of the way, and let's look specifically at some of the pharaonic structures. Okay, we said that the first thing that Ra Atum did was to create the Nubians, right? In fact, there were 5 centers of creation. 5 centers of creation. Bear in mind with me that Dr. Carruthers says that these are not 5 competing centers, but is the same principle operating at different sites. So we have Ra at Memphis, at Heliopolis, Ptah at Memphis. We have Thoth at Hermopolis. We have Khnum at Elephantine at Aswan, and also at Esna, and we have Amun at Karnak. Okay, so the 5 gods of creation at their respective sites were Ra, who was based at Heliopolis, as I said. He effected creation through fluids. Some have said that he masturbated to create humans. Ptah at Memphis used thought, Though-T, think, to create, right? He thought and he spoke creation. Thought, Thoth, the deity that was the creator of all forms of knowledge. He was one of the lawyers of Osiris, right? He was based at Hermopolis. And he laughed, Laghed, 8 times. He said, ha, 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 8 times, and 8 gods appeared with a predetermined destiny of what to do, okay? And then Khnum at Elephantine and again at Esna, he made man on his potter's wheel using the Nile mud, Nile clay. And finally, Amun at Karnak used incomprehensibility. I mean, he was so complex that when he was finished making man, you didn't even know what he did. He was like a magician. So, as Dr. Carruthers said, they're not competing principles, but it's the same principle operating in different locations, and we will see them as operating through different lenses. Okay?
Right.
Now let's talk about the geographical setting. Okay, where is the temple located? The temple can either be located on the riverbank, it could be located in the desert, it could be located a distance from the river, it could be located in a mountain, it could be located at the base of the mountain, depending on where it's going to be located, right? Now, where it's located, the soil upon which the structure will be built has to be able to hold up what it is that you constructed. In the earliest period, when people began to worship their divinity through their belief system, they would crowd in on the little house of the god. So what the king did was to create sufficient space so that a wide road can be constructed and the people will be away from the divinity whenever he transited that location, so that they wouldn't have any kind of squeezing. You remember what happened in Korea, right? So they created, after the big road was made, they created a big enclosure, an enclosure to house the sanctuary. Remember we said in the beginning that the sanctuary was over there where the God lives. And when you got into the yard, then it was the little building inside it. So you had a pylon joined to an enclosure wall. It was high enough so that people don't hear what's going on inside. Whatever happened in there, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, what happened in the temple stays in the temple. Only the initiated and those in the highest ranks can move within the temple. If you were a priest, you can get in the gate. But unless you were it's not a private, let's use military parlance, right? In order to get up in there, you got to be a general. But if you're a private and corporal and all that, you stay out there in the court. The location of the temple determines the nature of the foundation. Right? Temples beside the river needed better foundations because of the water table and the flooding due to inundation. Temples in the desert never had a problem about firmness of the terrain. The same can be said for temples built beside and within a mountain. Temples in which over time people have built their homes and roofs or resided over, blackened with fire. They lived in the temple walls those that survived either became blackened or they fell in, and over time they were covered over. When we say Dr. Ben often spelled out words that people didn't have to understand at first. So when we speak about Amun, you can spell his name different ways. A-M-O-N, A-M-E-N, A-M-U-N. Or Amun-Ra, A-M-O-N-R-A, A-M-E-N-R-A, A-M-E-M-U-N-R-A. So Amun, when we say Amun, we mean any one of those spellings. Okay, I talked about the cartouche and the Shenu. Okay, now, there were various types of temples. Okay, so we have the God temple, which is worship temple. We have the king temple, which is the mortuary temple, where the king, when he died, he was going to be worshipped, and he died and he survived the judgment. He went to heaven, he survived the judgment, he declared through a voice, he would now be worshipped on earth because he survived and he's in heaven. Now, if he was strong enough and he lived long enough, he could, once he built this temple, he could be worshipped while he is here as a god, but he's not a full-fledged god, only when he went to heaven and he met his brother and sister gods and the great God up there, that he could become a god with real power. So he was a play god down here, but when he got up there, he became a real full-fledged god. Okay, so George G.M. James, he wrote that book called Stone Legacy, 1954 publication by New York Philosophical Society. He told us that the soul had 9 parts. I'm not going to get into it. I'll give you the names of the various parts of the soul, right? Such as the Ka, the Kat, K-H-A-T, the Ba, B-A, the Ab, A-B, or the heart, right? The Kebit, K-H-A-B-I-T, the shadow. The Ku, which is the spiritual soul. The Sahu is the spiritual body. The Sekhim, or the power of the spiritual personification. Then the Ren is the name. The name, everything has to have a name. If it doesn't have a name, it doesn't exist. I don't know if you ever remember this, there was there was a movie, I think Clint Eastwood, and they were looking for this gold, and the guy told them where the gold was, and he said, the name is right here. And when they found the tomb or grave, he showed that there was no name. There was no name. So the name, if you don't have a name, you don't exist. So the name is the most powerful portion of the human spirit, the human entity, right? Then he talks about additional attributes that the body or the soul has, which is omnipresence, metamorphosis, locomotion. It's nutritive, that's it, wants nutrition. Mortality will die. Immortality will live. What do you live? How do you live? This man is living because of his works. Right? Dr. Ben living. And all of us here that are true will live on because we've given our people something that they can hold on to when we're gone. Right? Rationality, reason, spirituality, morality, ethereal, shadow, and all these comes in the book of the dead. We must learn to view the temple in time perspective, okay? So the temple, we have to see the difference, the evolution of the temple. In the prehistoric time, when the temple was just a little space with a little piece of stick with a piece of cloth attached to it, and a little fence to keep out the animals and what have you. And it evolved to the archaic period, the old kingdom, middle kingdom, the new kingdom, even the late period. I have said before that we have to see the temple as emanating from the outside, from the inside out, and not from the outside in, because the God looked out to bless his creation, where man looked in to worship and ritualize. A good example of this is shown in Gaston Maspero. He was a French one. He's the one who discovered the pyramid text in 5th and 6th dynasty tombs at Saqqara. Right? He was really a master. He had his problems. Okay? All of them had this racial animosity. But you have to, okay, so even in Harlem right now, there's some people saying, don't read the white man. The white man did the reclamation of the evidence from the earth. You have to read the white man. But you have to read the white man with a knowledge of understanding of who you are, of what it is that you're looking at. The work of reclamation occurred in the period from 1870 to 1920, and you could even stretch it from 1870 to 1930. Right? People like Dr. Ben didn't have the benefit of the archaeological reports. He did his work. 1915, W.B. Du Bois wrote The Negro. He didn't have that information. Even 1936, when Carter G. Woodson wrote the African background outline, he didn't have that information. But they wrote a lot of important works about the Negro. The surgeon in the Civil War,
Mark Twain?
yeah, right? He was talking about the African evidence in Egypt, but he didn't have all this stuff, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But they were on point. So what has happened now is that, excuse me, people like me who have found the evidence, okay, I didn't bother to bring it, but I didn't really want to confuse things. I wanted to show you this little flash drive with 9,800 articles. You don't know about it. You hear about it. Right? You don't know where to find it. Even if you're able to locate it, you cannot access it. But I found it. I got it. I want to give it to you. Okay, but I ain't got enough hands. I need a dozen people helping me to push this information. Okay? But we're going to get it. It may take us a little longer.
Yes, sir.
But our people will get there. Who was it saying, we may not get there with you, but we will get there. You know what I'm saying? So other people get the information, just taking me a little longer trying to get myself together. I don't know, I got this idea I wanted to say, especially to you brothers and sisters out there in California. I mentioned this to a brother that I'm very familiar with, okay? Jamie Foxx. And you can get to him. Jamie Foxx said to John Lewis, if you need a favor, call on me. Right? Call on me. He never fulfilled that offer. I need $5 million to build me a black research library in Crown Heights. I gotta buy the building and equip it. I want to create a 4-story structure. I want to put a theater on the first floor where young blacks can act and speak. And on that floor, there's going to be a mic that can go around the world in Africa and talk to all these people. Second floor, it's going to be a service center with some computers so that the community can access it. Okay? The third floor is going to be a reading room. And on the fourth floor, I got 20,000 books in storage. I pay him every month to keep. I want to put it in there. You tell Jamie Foxx, give me $5 million. Don't put it in my hand, but organize it so that we can build this. We don't have any structure. I went to all the politicians. Oh, they're talking from every. That's very. Used to say I had so many medical challenges. Fluids are coming out from every orifice. Every orifice.
That's right.
My eyes, my ears, my chest, my this, that. They talk from all this thing. Nobody's helping. Over 30 years. I discussed this with Major Woods. At the breakfast. At Labor Day. Right now. I spoke to, earlier this month, in this year, in April, I think, this guy is making, I swear, he is making, his secretary said, he's making an appointment to meet with you. Right here in Brooklyn, right? April. Jamie, there is a children's museum in Brooklyn. Okay. And then another group went and built children's museum. I learned a long time ago. The stones remain. The people will come and go. A lot of our politicians come and go, but there's nothing there. What they left?
Real talk.
They left nothing. Put a black research library in North Crown Heights so that our young people will have a place to be able to learn, act out, and preserve our names like that. Yeah?
That's building. That's a building.
Okay, so my sparrow said, how we doing with that? We got him out of our book. Okay, so I wanted to show you how the temple is actually built, and there was a reason for that. Okay, the temple is built from within out, and not from out within. The God looks out to bless, the people look in to worship. Maspero, in describing the temple of Khonsu in the central Theban sanctuary. You remember we said that there was a northern section, there was a southern section, and Karnak, Amun was in the central section. So this is an extension of Amun in the southern. So here's how he describes it. Bear with me. He says, on analysis, it resolves itself into two parts separated by a thick wall. So he's talking about where the sanctuary is inside, looking out, right? In the center of the lesser division is the Holy of Holies, which is he's describing it according to a plan. which is a modern plan, but nevertheless. And he gives you A, B, C, and so forth. So, in the center of the lesser division is the Holy of Holies, open at both ends and isolated from the rest of the building by a surrounding passage. So there's a passage around the central location where the God resides, which is 10 feet wide. To the right and left of this sanctuary are small dark chambers, and behind it is a hall of 4 columns, from which open several other chambers. Such a house of the God, having no communication with the adjoining parts except by 2 doors in the southern wall. These open into a wide and shallow hypostyle hall, divided into nave, and aisles. The nave is supported by 4 lotus flower columns, 23 feet in height. The aisles each contain 2 lotus bud columns of 18 feet high. The roof of the nave is therefore 5 feet higher than that of the sides. This elevation was made use of for lighting purposes. The clerestory, that becomes a part of basilica architecture in Europe. The elevation is made for use of for lighting purposes. The clerestory being fitted with stone gratings through which admitted light during daytime. The court was square, surrounded by a double colonnade entered by way of 4 side gates and a great central gateway flanked by 2 quadrangular towers with flopping fronts. This pylon measures 105 feet in length, 25 feet in width, and 60 feet in height. It contains no chambers, only a narrow staircase which leads to the top of the gate and hence to the towers. 4 long grooves in facade, reaching for a third of its height, corresponding to 4 quadrilangular openings cut through the whole thickness of the masonry. These were fixed 4 great wooden masts formed by joined beams held in place by wooden framework fixed in the 4 openings above. That's where the flags were flown. So what he's doing is he's describing the building, the temple, from within outward. Okay. Now, 2 things. First, Abydos was a holy site of pilgrimage for the duration of dynastic rule. Flinders Petrie in 1900 found the levels of 10 different temples at Abydos going back to 3100 BC. 10 different levels, because what has happened is there was what is called land uplift. When the river rose, during the inundation, it brought so much silt and the land rose, so he was able, as an archaeologist using his tool, he was able to cut the soil and he could see the different levels of land occupation, just like how there are really 4 types of dating. So you have what is called dendrochronology, which is tree-ring dating. You have thermoluminescence, which dates in the middle. You have carbon-14, and there's another one, I can't remember what that is. But he was able to see the different levels, right? Now, the 19th dynasty, Seti, the great one, built this temple to Osiris. Osiris, it is one of those temples where 7 divinities would worship. Osiris, Isis, Horus, Ptah, Ra, Amun, Ptah, and he Seti became a god, so he measured 7. Seti began building the temple outward. So the Holy of Holies, the first hypostyle hall, and then his son, Ramses II, comes on the scene, finds that his father's work was incomplete, and he built a second hypostyle hall out to the court. The second hypostyle hall, back to the sanctuary, creates what is called the covered temple, the real temple. The yard doesn't matter. The court is considered something like the yard. Okay, the temple can be compared with a domestic structure. Okay, so I'm coming to see you, so I arrive at your gate. Alright? Then I entered your yard, and from the gate to the front of the door, ring the bell. That's the second part of the house. I entered the living room where you would entertain me as a guest, and then beyond the living room is the bedroom where no guests, but only family members can go. So the temple itself, you come to the pylon. There is a gate which we call like our yard would be a court. Beyond the court would be a hypostyle hall, which is the third part, which is comparable to the living room, and then beyond the living room would be the sanctuary where God resides. So the temple itself has four parts. Okay, so he builds the second hypostyle hall, or he builds a hypostyle hall to complete his father's work. So now when we go to Abydos, we enter in the first hypostyle hall, which actually is the second hypostyle hall, and we go to the first hypostyle hall into the second hypostyle hall, which actually is the first hypostyle hall. So the naming is reversed. It's just like in Karnak, okay? When we go to Karnak, Karnak has 10 pylons, okay? So you go in the first pylon, second pylon, third pylon, fourth pylon, fifth pylon, sixth pylon, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's not how it was built, right? It was built 4, 5, 8, 6, 7, 9, 10, 3, 2, 1. Okay? So we have to know how things are in the correct order to understand, even though they're confusing today. We know they're confusing, but we accept that for clarity and understanding. So, having said all of that, I can take some questions because I've spoken a great deal so far.
Okay, give Dr. Monderson a great big hand. Okay, we're going to have the first question from the audience. Anybody from the audience? I see Brother Woolley.
Yes. How would you define spirit and soul?
Well, there are two different entities. All right, soul is a part of the human makeup. All right, spirit is a divine entity that is outside of the human spirit, the human body. All right, it can be communicated with. I mean, I'm the first to say I don't have all the answers. Okay, I'm giving you my take. You know, there's scientific definition and there's working definition. Right? So I'm giving you a working definition of my understanding. So soul would be that entity within the human frame. And some believe that it is immortal, that it can live on. Right? Spirit, it depends on. Okay, there could be divine spirit, there can be human spirit. So, it is fluid. Spirit is more fluid than soul. That's all I can tell you.
Okay, second, anybody from the Zoom audience would like to ask Dr. Monderson a question? Anybody from the Zoom audience?
Yes, I have a question. How are you doing, Doctor? That was an excellent segment. I feel like I learned so much. What do you say is the future of these African studies, and what do you see them as potentially reaching the next generations? Because I personally feel like there's going to be some form of a disconnect with the future generations learning such vital information, potentially even in school. Do you think there's a chance that these kind of studies can get taught in schools, specifically even HSBCUs, for instance? What's your take on that, brother? Thank you.
Yeah, when Dr. Ben passed, Dr. Leonard James, who has been my principal mentor, he said that every Black Studies program, every Black Studies professor owes Dr. Ben credit for moving them in that direction. Dr. Clark used to say that Dr. Ben's work stands there. People buy Dr. Ben's work but don't read it. So we got to encourage the young people. Again, the book that I wrote, it's called, I don't know where it is, the copy of the cover, Empower Your Child to Empower, here it is. Okay? It's a 12-volume, sorry if you can get this, right? Empower Your Child through Black Studies exercises, okay? Empower your child's reading and knowledge through Black Studies exercises. So like I took about 85 articles that I've written in the Daily Challenge and I deconstruct them and I created this reading formula that young people can read. The fact of the matter is that we got to get our young people reading, okay? People are saying that reading is dying out. No, it's not dying out. It's not. I just came out of Houston, Texas, where there was a Black book festival in Houston, and there were a lot of people out there. Let me tell you something, okay? The first Sunday in October, the Brooklyn Book Festival attracts more than 500 tents of publishers and people selling books. So the book industry, especially out in New York, is very active. So we got to get our people. Okay, one of the things that as I was preparing for this I thought about, right? I remember seeing a political cartoon that said, I showed a big rat taking a little rat on an elevated area and said, son, I'm leaving all of this for you. And what they show you? They show you billowing black smoke, abandoned buildings, garbage piled up. The smell is terrific. And I am asking, what are you leaving for your son and your daughter? And he said, well, I'm leaving these 12 high-priced sneakers that I bought. Well, only one person can wear a pair of sneakers, 12 people can read a book. So you got to buy the books and create a library in your own home and encourage your children. Remember, what was the other guy named?
Third World Press?
No, not Third World. Baldwin, James Baldwin said, I read every book in the local library. He started reading the book on downstairs shelf, and he worked in. So you got to get your children working, reading, whether it's start with the comics or whatever, okay? I got a problem myself, because I got two young ones. And I got to be behind them. I can't hear them because they want to say you don't do that, right? But I'm not satisfied that they're not reading enough. They read, finish their homework quickly, and then they're on TikTok or whatever. The worst thing that could have happened is the creation of some of the telephone programs, right? Now, I met this guy last week when I was down in Houston, and he was really impressed with me. He's supposed to be looking here, right? JD. And he said, I gotta get some of your work on TikTok, right? I said, well, I've never been to TikTok. I don't even know what it is. I don't know the continent. You know, when I was leaving home this afternoon, there was a movement to close down TikTok, expel TikTok from the United States. There's something wrong with it, okay? So we got to get our children reading, buy the books, put them in the house. Okay, so I was in the pharmacy on Saturday, and this guy says to his friend, they talking. He said, tell this guy how many books you got. I said, well, I got about 30 books on Amazon. And this guy, I never seen him. He said, mister, you should be making these little videos for your great-grandchildren. I said, my great-grandchildren? I was fascinated that he's thinking so far ahead, because he's telling me, your great-grandchildren want to know, what did my grandfather look like? What did he say? This and that. So we got to cultivate our young people and work with them so that they can now stand up.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question there?
Yes, the brother, the professor is a beautiful brother. And, you know, he's very eloquent in his presentation, detailed, and the method of your approach and presentation is of a high order. I want to acknowledge that because I appreciate it. Applying these principles of commit today in our society, obviously you believe in building. What are some of the other ways you think we should build?
Well, again, this book here, I begin each chapter with the Egyptian alphabet, okay? And I say, practice writing the symbols, write your name, and practice writing little sentences. Study the photograph. It's got about 8,000 pages. 4,000 pages. It's got about 2,700 photographs. So the photographs reinforce the text of what I'm saying, right? It's got all the parts that a reading person need to know to be able to identify, to create what I call intellectual autonomy. That is to say, being able to look at something, understand what it is that you're reading, strengthen yourself, put on your guard, so that you can deal with whatever the challenges are. Everything comes to you, I know how to deal with this. We gotta work on it.
That sounds powerful, and what you're saying about pictographs and the writing being the hieroglyphics as the basis of the young embracing is I would agree with that and say that that's high potent energy that you're dispensing.
Let me say that I was really impressed with this brother because I met him a couple of years back at the festival, okay? And he's living the Osiris phenomenon, okay? And we need more of those kinds of people working in that particular realm. Professor, I told you how I came to this subject. Dr. Ben told me choose
One country.
one country. I chose Egypt, and I specialize. He said, "Be a specialist on the generals." Professor Simmons. He said, "I don't write about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I write about ancient Egypt because not enough people are doing this work. Okay, so we got to cultivate our children, and we got to spend the money to take them to Egypt." So that they can see and begin to understand that this is the takeoff point. The visual imagery that a trip to Egypt does, it transforms you. So this is the investment that we have to make. Okay? We have to make the investment in our children so that they can now feel tethered or centered, as the Afrocentrists would say, and then go from there.
Invest in our own DNA.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay. Zoom audience, anybody from the Zoom audience have a question for Dr. Monderson? Zoom audience.
Yes, I have one. Brother Brown from the ATL, and I just want to tell Brother Mud, very educational, very educational.
Oh boy. Well,
Thank you.
you know who that is?
Okay, next question from the floor. Brother Mike.
Just want to ask you, Dr. Monderson, the historical importance of Waset, and is Waset the intellectual center of ancient Kingdom?
It is. From the New Kingdom on, Middle and New Kingdom on. But they have created, I don't want to say they're late coming, okay? But they have created enough that's all we need to do. There are more temples there than anywhere else in the world. There are more tombs there than anywhere else, ancient times, right? And from there, going further south, you're gonna encounter what is called the Greco-Roman temples. Dr. Lewis always talked about that, and he always said that they may say Greco-Roman late, but they weren't really built. They were built by Egyptian and Nubian architects, but under Greek and Roman conquering influence, okay? But the late temples have so much information that the earlier temples of the New Kingdom don't have. And what they have done is now they force us to go forward to look backward, okay? Because what the Greek temples tell us is what the New Kingdom temples stood for, but didn't leave evidence of. That is to say, the New Kingdom temples had their works written on papyrus, right? Whereas the Greco-Roman temples have their works written on the walls of the temples. It's like what it's called. I mentioned Erman in the beginning. I couldn't remember what it was. Okay, I was reading about Adolf Erman. He had a classic book, Life in Ancient Egypt. And he was talking about a document, but he never mentioned anything about it, except it tells you what it is. But the Shabaka stone, the Shabaka stone was a document that the 25th dynasty pharaoh Shabaka found as written on a piece of papyrus that is quote unquote moth-eaten. It was disintegrating, and he found it, his people, and they put it on, they transcribed it onto a black basalt piece of stone, okay? Black basalt piece of stone, and it is now in the British Museum. It's called the Memphite theology. That is the theology of a Memphite priest. But what it does do is it describes how Ptah, the God of creation, created the world through thought and voice, and instructed Horus and Seth to do his bidding, which was to create humanity and the world we live in. Okay? So there's a lot that they stood for, but they didn't leave it in the manner that the later temples did. But there's so much there. Scholars have now been measuring the evidence on the walls of the Greek Roman temples, and they're measuring them in miles. Okay, now you go to the Library of Congress. They say they have something like 6,000 miles of books downstairs in the library. All right, these guys got 5. What I tell you, I think 8. I can't remember, miles of documents on the walls. That if you are encouraged, the young people especially, good point you made, right? If you encourage to become interested in this, there is so much of it. That is why the images in this book, right, which attempts to grab the interest of the young people, instead of being, I don't know if JB's gonna put this on TikTok, right? But they're gonna practice writing the hieroglyphs. They're going to look and try to learn from the writing that I have in the photographs and the images of the temples, tools, and stuff like that I include, or what have you. That should keep them interested in the subject, okay? That's the most I can do. I can give them, I said it in the beginning, you can take the horse to the water, can't make him drink. But what did Teddy Q say? You work that beast until he's thirsty, and he's going to drink. So you can make some incentives for your children to begin to learn this stuff, and then we got a chance. But nevertheless, my job is to create and put it up there.
Okay,
real quick.
anybody, the next question is from the Zoom audience. Zoom audience, go ahead.
All right, so I wanted to ask you 2 things. First, I know you're familiar with Noah's Ark, and then I know you're familiar with Atlantis. So there's a theory out there potentially that Atlantis was in the Sahara Desert when it wasn't the desert in the past. And my thing is potentially maybe Noah's Ark is what washed it away. Are you familiar with that, and what's your take on it? Thank you.
We have to deal with the tangible, okay? I don't know if Atlantis was in the desert, Sahara, right? There is currently a commercial with Morgan Freeman, which is he's pitching Turkish Airlines, and he was saying in essence that there was a time when 200, 300 million years ago, there was no Europe, Asia, Africa, there's one piece of land. So I don't know if you want to go back there. Then what's going on back then, okay? So you got to be careful. They don't use your little fertilizer to scatter over too wide an area where it wouldn't bear any fruit. For all we've been told, the Noah's Ark, there have been so many theories about it, that it was on top of a hill, a mountain or whatever, it left up there, the highest point when the water receded. So deal with the tangible, okay, and work from there. Dr. Ben told me, he said, when you're dealing with Egypt, get the oldest material you can find and work from there. That's why I work with the archaeological evidence from 1870 to 1920, 1930. Okay, and this is what I call tangible, because based on this, we're able to reconstruct the dynasties from Dynasty 1 to. So, and then again, that is really early period. Okay, my interest really finishes at 500 BC, right? 525 BC. I don't even come into modern times, except maybe occasionally, right? But look at where the foundation of everything is. It's in Africa, Central Africa. I talk about 107,000 years ago. Okay, imagine that your brother was up there mixing his paint and thinking, well, let me put this Van Gogh, whatever this guy's name is, on the wall. They don't tell us that. Okay, they don't tell us that. Okay, there's so much of falsity. The donation of Constantine is a falsity. This and that. We gotta find our own heritage, find out about our own heritage, live it, practice it, perfect it. Asante used to say about Africa, he said we gotta discard the elements that are old and use what is good and go forward with that. Sorry, man.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question. Thank you, Zoom audience. Next questions from the floor. Question, go ahead.
Greetings. Thank you so much for all your great wisdom and education you're sharing with us. I was just recently reading about newly researched Egyptian history that says that the Thoth, and they gave the name previous, and the animal heads that we see depicted in hieroglyphics were not gods. They were initiates going through the systems and being taught the great work and science they had to do. And as you said, that place where only the initiates and the high priest could go, because everybody couldn't go there or know this or use it. And before that, the way it's taught over here is that Egyptians were worshiping animals as opposed to people. Well, how do you see that?
Well, like I said, if I'm invited back, I didn't get to finish today. But very tell me, I always had half an hour left. I wanted to say run through a couple of things, but I wanted to deal with the ritual of what happens within the temple.
Right.
Okay. You gotta be careful. That's why we have to learn a lot of what we know, what's been taught us. Because what's been taught us is falsity. Okay, I wanted to, I didn't get to all of that, right? Okay, let me just try to keep me on point, but I want to make a couple messages, right? Okay, so orientation, right? They tell us north, south, east, and west. It's not north, south, east, and west. It's south, north, west, and east. Okay? But that's been ingrained in us. They tell us red, white, and blue. It's not red, white, and blue. You see the lady here? You see the lady here? This is Queen Amos Nefertari. The first time we see this tricolor on the body of an African woman.
You showed me those guns, man. You sent me the text message.
The body. She's wearing a white dress with blue and red stripes, streamers, right? So it's supposed to be white, red, and blue. But they teach us red, white, and blue. So we got to relearn that, okay? The whole notion of Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore, where all the presidents go, they put them up there, the big ones, what have you.
The greatest.
That's an African replica.
The Valley of the Kings?
Out there in Karnak, right, on the backside of the mountain, Queen Hatshepsut's architect, Senwin, he carved that image of his family up there. They don't tell you that. It's like also like how this guy was talking about historic memory. Okay, the Washington Monument. The Washington Monument is supposed to mirror an obelisk. The obelisk is a one piece of stone, a complete piece of stone. The Washington Monument is not. It's a man-made concrete structure of steel and concrete.
But that's
You
not
remember?
by the museum. Cleopatra's Needle is next to the museum in...
It wasn't hers.
No, I'm saying they call
Yeah,
it. But that's an
right.
obelisk.
Okay.
That is an
If you went to, I can tell you with a man march. I haven't been to the woman. I didn't realize that they had a woman. The 25th. My grandson was born on the 25th of October. I've been so busy. I didn't even realize that they were having a woman's march. I went to the woman's march. First one with G2 and his son, Cordial. Okay? But if you went to the first Million Man March, Dr. Ben was there. And what he said, I was sitting on the right side of the marble terrace in the back, right? And he said, turn around, look at that. He said, you build that. But what he was saying is that the concept of what the Washington Monument stood for was an African replica. So right, they took all of our stuff and fed it to us, like how so much is being fed to us today that is falsity, and we buy it, right, without questioning. Okay, but your topic is they weren't worshiping animals.
Right.
Okay, these people. Okay, there was a story. Okay, the king was always featured as a mighty hunter, and he had the skill and the strength of a lion. So he wore a tail. Okay? So some guy went into Africa, and there was this woman who was a ruler, right? And she had a tail, right? Same as the Egyptian pharaoh, symbolizing the strength that he had. He went to Europe and said, African women have tails. And that's how the whole thing got misconstrued, right? It's like
Old wise tales.
Through World War II,
No,
the
it's not
the
a wise
black
tale.
soldiers said, people in France said, can I see your tail?
Well, you see, but that's how things get.
That's how far it is.
That's how things get moved from center.
I got you.
This brother talked about from the center to the fringe. I'll give you his name again. He was working with Von Sertiger, right? He doing research out there in Asia, Dr. Dr. Mark knew him. He died a couple of years ago, right? And he wrote this article, but he was saying that we were in the center of things and they pushed us over to the side, right? The Africans stood by and learned from nature, right? For example, the ibis, the priests observed an ibis. Well, you know the ibis has a long beak, right? This ibis at the waterside was cleaning itself, right? And he stretched his beak out, collect a beak full of water, and turn his neck out and put his beak up into his anus, and put the water there and shake himself out, and he let it out. The priest said, hey, we wash ourselves outside, but we don't wash ourselves inside. So they begin to create a concoction to help cleanse themselves out. Us old folks used to remember when Sunday Mama gave us castor oil, and you can't tell no kid today, castor oil, you drink what? They saw certain powers that these animals had, and the symbolic power that they had is what they worship. Okay, so the ibis was an intelligent bird. So they personified wisdom with this bird. Okay, they can see that the falcon, the hawk, can soar into the heavens, right? So they personified the god Horus as being able to rise to that extent, right? They saw the soul, they considered that the soul had wings, that after death, the soul would just rise. I don't know, I'll say this to you, right? I support my family, but I have a sister, and my mother gave her certain, and she told me, as we stood there watching Mom transition, that she saw this entity leave the body. I didn't have the eyes to see it. I mean, I was looking over here, what have you, right? It's the same way they saw the soul as having the wings to ascend back to its heavenly domain. So you got to be careful. I mean, if you really think about it, right? The Bible. I'm not saying anything bad about the Bible, but the Bible is so complex. Now you look at a preacher, right? Take for example this guy Billy Graham, right? Billy Graham take a line, half a sentence, and he's going on for a day explaining what that is. Okay, so but you got to have these preachers have a certain amount of training. I'm not talking about the con men that tell you buy me 10 Cadillacs so that I can buy one every day. But the serious preachers who instructing their congregations, right? They study the complexity of the word, and they're able to break it down and make it more simple for you and I. And that's what the Africans did. Right. But the thing is that they were doing that before anybody could ever think about it.
All right, thank you. Okay, we got another question from the Zoom. Anybody?
Did you turn it on?
Question from the Zoom? All right, question from the floor.
Yeah, just two things. One real quick, just to answer a part of the sister's question. Europeans, men, when they saw the attraction of African American soldiers on their continent, they consequently had to discourage women from advancing towards these black men. So that's why they told those stories about black men had tails, because they were saying that basically those black soldiers are part animal, and they got exceptionally, they're exceptionally endowed, and it'll hurt you because you're used to white men, having sex with you. So if you get with a black man, he's an animal. And the proof is that he's got a tail, and he's got a tail in the front and the back. and you don't want that. So that's just some stuff that they just concocted to discourage white women from dealing with black men. You know, so that's just a part of stuff that's been going on for the past 100 years in Europe. They do that to discourage Italian women, Germans, Russians, all of them. They all have similar stories, not just France, as you mentioned. All of them got these stories because they try to discourage that. And the other part I wanted to ask Dr. Monderson is that with all this great and precise teaching you're doing with Africa, specifically Kemet, how do you make that relative? Not because we know the significance of it, and you've been talking about the significance of Kemet, because we need that, because when people are being taught we're bereft of contributions towards humankind in history, we need those images. But how do you make it relative to the average 14-year-old that's looking up to Biggie and Jay-Z and Drake and all them? How do you make that relative? If you
Well, that's a very good question, Brother Graves, okay? Professor Small said that's on them. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're making money. That's it. You know.
Right.
Okay. Now,
Images on your
I went to I was in Harlem, and this guy come to me, approached me, and said, I never heard about you. I run a cultural center in Harlem, but I never heard about you. So I said to him, did you ever hear about the Daily Challenge? He said, no. I said, well, I wrote 1,000 pieces for them, right? Did you, you miss all of that? Jack Fella, we used to call him Black Fella. Fella's the only one who said, I read everything you wrote. You know, he used to go to the newspaper, pick up the paper, and then hand it out to the teachers, right? The newspaper is written at the 6th grade level, okay? 6th grade level. So this guy was saying to me, look, I need help, okay? And I'm not getting the help that I need. But he was saying to me, I wrote that 1,000 pieces, I have a few hundred of them. He was saying to me, why don't you use some of that and put it on the internet so that young people could just maybe pay 25 cents or 50 cents and download one piece of that and read that, okay? There are a number of things that can be done. You know, I say everything has been discovered. Not everything has been discovered. But I have that kind of information written at the 6th grade level because it was a newspaper. Newspapers written. So, but I ain't getting the help. But I can't wait for that. You know, in the old country, the guys used to work in the minefields, and they're working so fast, and they leave, and somebody will come and say, "Can I work the backs?" And they still get gold and diamonds in the backs. I need help to get my work out there, but it can be done. That's why I told this guy Fox, okay, and Jay-Z and them. Let's build this library in Crown Heights. You guys out there with all your money, what you doing with it? Making more money? And then you pass on.
Okay. No more questions? We got one more, Brother Willie?
Yeah, because I'm convinced that the politicians are enemies of the people. Now,
Don't use that word. Don't use that.
I hear you.
No.
But listen, what would you put forward to the people for a social, economic, political paradigm for the people in the future?
Well, it's about education, okay? Once you're educated, okay, remember now, in slavery days, they didn't want us to learn to read because the reading man is a thinking man, okay? And they say, wait a minute, why am I wearing these chains? Okay, so if we spend more money, and then some of these after-school programs, I just tell you, I just gave you a blueprint. See the guy said, go play black ball? That was the idea of the library with a theater, a reading room, a service center, okay? But it ain't gonna get done, because these people got wool in their ears. They don't hear nothing. and they got nothing off of that. Okay. One guy just made a donation to the Republican $2 billion, $1.something billion, right? So you know, they gotta get up off of.
That's right. Is there another way to get your books from Amazon? I don't want to give Jeff Bezos a dime.
No, well, listen, you ain't giving him nothing, man. Listen, you want the knowledge,
Can we
okay?
get it from you?
I have copies of my books. No, that girl over there, he always come to my, I'm at the African Festival, he always there. Osiris, he always over there, you know. But I got copies of my work. But the point is that we got to you remember what I begin by saying? That I want to cultivate the good, okay? I cultivate the good through my work, but I can carry the animal. I can't beat the animal enough or work him enough so he can get thirsty. All I can do is carry him to the water and hope that he will drink. Okay?
Okay,
One more
One last question right there.
question. I just want to take the opportunity to build on what the brother asked about today. Organization and leadership. We have a foundation of knowledge, who we are, DNA awakening, but organization and leadership is required. And within that, we have what the brother talking about, a reservoir and an oasis of knowledge. One is sent to the library. That's what all of them do, they build libraries. And that's what we do, that is our science. That's new, that's ours, that's what our temples and commit are libraries. And today we gotta make that library applicable to those that's involved in organization. And organization is our empowerment and our dynasty. We got to bring what, we just can't talk about it, we just can't point at it. We the manifestation of it now. So it's about manifesting that within us. Just that we manifest all that, what that brother doing, he manifested for the library. It's different individuals and organizations that are us, but they all are different manifestations, all bricks to the pyramid. So the organization of all those different bricks is what's going to bring the continuity and the empowerment. Build the pyramid. The network function, and we the bricks.
Like I said, so it can be seen. Respect.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, give Dr. Monderson a great big hand.
Oh, yeah.
You know this, give Dr. Monderson a great big hand. Throw it out on the street. That he's welcome to come back in 2 more weeks. Want to thank you very much.
Brother G said it. How do you make the black nation rise? Educate, or.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Goodbye, Dr. Mendes.
Yeah, but
Brother Mike said.
Everybody come up front.
Okay, we're going to take a quick picture right quick. Anybody want to come up and take a quick picture?
Sure.
I want to